Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the first Linux user group of 2025. Hello everybody. We're going to be talking about Linux security practices, what we do to secure our systems, our home labs, and things like that. And then if that topic doesn't take us too far and we still have time, we'll talk about dual booting, uh, and if it's still something that you need to do. Thank you, YouTube, for letting me know that I'm live. I already knew that. I should have put things on silent, as I usually should have. Okay, anyways, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. If those of you who are watching live, if you have audio problems, just give me a ping or something like that. Don't ping me on Discord, because I will not hear it. I have streamer mode on, so I won't hear your ping. So there you go. All right, so let's just start off with a general question. Are there any specific security practices that you use that you think everyone should use? Just broadly. Who wants to go? Steve, you ring in first.
I am really quick on the button. Yes, I am following the best security practices ever. None. Wasted your time. Having fun.
Okay. Fraggle, go ahead.
I think that everyone should learn or have an understanding of things like IP tables or I think it's like NF tables, I think is a new one, or UFW, I believe is the other one. I mean, they're all essentially the same thing. I think System D uses like Firewall D, which is just another way to get to IP tables. But I think learning and understanding how that works, how to lock down or open, like allow or not allow specific ports on your system, and how to configure like the inflow and outflow of traffic. It's really, really important. I mean, that's essentially where most of the vulnerabilities come from, because it's not like you have random people coming into your house and using your PC or anything like that, right? Like nobody has access to mine. I mean, every now and then my wife uses it. She doesn't fully understand how, but she gets it. So, but yeah, I think something like that is extremely important. How to configure firewall, and looking into like a DNS sinkhole like Pi-hole, instead of relying on third party ad blocker add-ons, or even a browser with built-in ad blocker and stuff like that. Things that you can't see the code of or understand or know exactly how they work. Because if you don't have those details and you can't look at those details, how do you know it's working properly, or how do you know it's not also a vulnerability itself? So, yeah.
Good tips. Des, go ahead.
A concept I call user sets. So instead of giving myself like one user with lots of permissions to always work with in my network, I like give myself and other users several users, each with just the permissions they need. So the idea is that they always use the lowest permissions possible when they use users.
Okay. Steve? You actually have something to say?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just kidding earlier. I just wanted to get the lug up on a good start.
Okay.
But the only security practice I follow is if I'm using a laptop in public, I make sure that the partition is encrypted and automatic login is not enabled. That's the And as far as firewall is concerned, especially when I'm connected to public Wi-Fi, I enable firewall only for these instances. But at home, I don't enable firewall. But in public spaces, always use a firewall or rerouting thing, just to avoid sinkholes, as I call them, security sinkholes.
Okay. D-Dubs?
Yeah, just I wanted to follow up and highly recommend the Pi-hole or a similar solution. I think everybody's home network should have it. It can really help you avoid a lot of issues. Plus, it has the benefit of being a DNS server too, so it makes it easy to resolve your internal machines if they're not using an external DNS.
For those of you who use Pyol, and you can answer this, DW, if you want, does that block? How does that work with YouTube now that they're so anti-ad blocker? Does that block YouTube ads, or am I going to have to see, oh my God, you're using an ad blocker, therefore you can't use YouTube ever again, type of thing?
I don't really think it's in that particular case is going to be helpful. It's more about a lot of the malicious sites because it's using a very simple database of malicious sites. Obviously, YouTube is not a malicious site, but if they're redirecting you to some of the ad link stuff, then yeah, it's just going to send them off to no. That's really how it works anyway.
Because I don't have it set up yet. I've been planning on it, but I was kind of hoping that it would block YouTube ads because then I could stop paying for premium because I'm a cheap bastard. But Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, to talk a little bit about Pi-hole. Unfortunately, back home in Leb, I don't have a connection good enough to work with Pi-hole, but there is another way to block all these malicious things by using something on Arch called, or any other distro. I don't know if it's available on the main repos or not. It's called HBlock, and it's got its own database and its own system only. It doesn't it doesn't apply to other systems, so it's not as strong as Pi-hole. But if your desktop is the only system you use, HBlock is pretty good, and I haven't seen any YouTube ads even after they announced Web v3. So I'm pretty good, and if you use it in combination with an ad blocker in your browser. So far, since you and I use Vivaldi, so far Vivaldi hasn't removed Web v2 stuff. So I think AdBlock is still working. Plus HBlock. I don't see malicious websites. It just blocks them. It says this is a malicious website, and you cannot go to that website no matter how much you try. So HBlock is an option.
Fraggle?
I don't think it specifically blocks like YouTube ads or anything like that. But if you don't want to necessarily pay for premium and still want to watch and navigate YouTube, I mean, it's not as pretty or easy or anything like that, but there are terminal apps for doing that, for searching YouTube. I use Newsbout for any channels that I want to subscribe to. I just use Newsbout and use MPV to play back the videos, and I don't have any ads. I'm not logged into YouTube or anything like that. So
Yeah, I do that too,
yeah.
but I also have. I'm a sucker for the algorithm apparently because I like to just go down a YouTube hole sometimes and say, "Oh, cool, random cat video." I think the other day I watched a walkthrough of Rome for a little while, and then all of a sudden I was in Italy for the whole damn day. It was just playing in the background. So one of the things that I do is just make sure that my computer is always updated. And I know it sounds stupid, but I've known so many people who are like, "Oh yeah, I haven't updated my computer in a year." Like, why? Like at least when you're using Linux, it feels like it's pretty easy to update. And then I guess if you're running a server, the updates obviously are more something that you have to kind of take into account. But from like a regular person just running on a desktop or a laptop or whatever, it seems like you should just do an update every day, unless you're using Debian, in which case there's no updates. You should be good. So, Steve, go ahead.
And I wanted to mention also the best protection, the best way you can protect yourself is by not installing stuff willy-nilly and know what you are doing on your system. That's the best thing you can do. But otherwise, when it comes to especially laptops in public situations, make sure you lock your system and you have a encrypted partition, and you're good to go. And don't store anything on the laptop itself. That way, if it's stolen, all your personal private data is on a external drive with you at all times. If the laptop gets stolen, there's nothing to or incriminate you or any private stuff. But as far as terminal apps go, HBlock is the best one I've used in a long time. So even if I want to go to a malicious website, it won't allow me. So I love HBlock, and that's the only thing I use.
Des, go ahead.
I would actually argue that updating too often is more of a security risk and a bad thing for the reason that things can stop working if you update too often, because there's always newer bugs.
Well, then it depends on what distro you're using, but also, I mean, if you're using a regular, fairly stable distro, you're not going to come in too many, situations where that's going to be the case. But also, I suppose like if you're on Arch or if you're on Gentoo, you could come up with that situation. But for most of them, you're just going to have an update that is released to everybody. It's going to work fairly reasonably well. And if your system's all the way broken, that's about the most secure system you're ever going to have because it's not working. Steve?
I just wanted to add to what Des said. It's not something that we can generalize, but when it comes to Arch, I've had Arch installed on one of my systems for 6 years running, and I update every time I get notified there's an update. I immediately update. I don't skip a single update, and so far it's been stable, and it's so stable. I've been using it for the past year as my home lab, and it's been solid. No major issues. There's a motherboard issue with that thing, but that's unrelated to the OS. But other than that, it functions just fine. Updates or no updates, it depends on what you have installed. If you have a lot of system tweaks installed, the things that modify the system on a low level, yeah, you might encounter issues. But if you don't have much of these things, just surface level customizations and stuff, you're good to go for as long as possible. So I just want to argue that can be true, but still untrue in many cases.
Drew?
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt, in that excuse me, that you know, certain distributions lend itself to a more like secure and stable experience. The thing that is interesting, I think, is there are, like we've talked about in the past, there are certain things that you definitely want to make sure that you're updating. One's the kernel, and then whatever distro you're using, they have security patches. So even if you're not, if you're not strict, in updating all of your software packages with all the application work, you definitely need to make sure that you're updating your security patches as well as any kernel patches that may be for that specific distro. The other thing that I was considering while this discussion was going on is just minimizing your security target or your security window by minimizing your unused software or your software that just isn't relevant anymore. So make sure that if you are in a point where it's like, hey, you know what, I'm just going to wipe this thing and start over again just because I have what I would consider bloat, not a bad idea. Just make sure that you're keeping things as tight as possible.
And two things there. One, also your browser is probably another one that you always want to have updated because you're going to have a lot of stuff there, right?
For
So
sure.
you want to make sure that your browser has
sure.
hosting. And then Matt went and forgot the second part. So Fraggle, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, essentially just reiterating the same things that were said. As far as updates go, like there's a difference between keeping your system up to date and just maintaining or installing like security related updates. I know I run Venom. It updates quite often. Like whenever any package releases a new version, that's essentially an update for me. But I always read change logs and stuff like that just to see, is there anything that's indicative where it would potentially break my system or not? Do I want to avoid this update for now, or do I want to install it? It's like when the XZ stuff came to light, right? That impacted a lot of people real quick. But it wasn't necessary for people to keep that as up to date as possible either. So, you really have to assess what's essential to update and what can be potentially postponed. Like Drew said, your kernel patches and everything like that. Yes. I run the usual RC kernels and everything like that. Like I custom build my kernel every single time there's a new RC. I run it. But I make sure that I have it kind of hardened in my own way. And I take a look through the code. Like the crazy thing is I'm not a programmer by any means. I have a difficult time actually coding myself, but I can read and understand it, and see where those changes are and where potential vulnerabilities could lie as well. So I think it's good to eventually get into that and be able to read and interpret those things for everyone, just so that they have a better understanding of what they are putting on their system and how it can impact how their system works. So
Good points.
or doesn't.
Yeah. Steve, go ahead.
I just wanted to agree with both Fraggle and Drew here, but sometimes using a secure a kernel with secure patches included comes at the cost of performance. Rare, I don't see a lot of kernels besides the CachyOS one, but the kernels out there that contain performance patches for gaming, for example, and security patches at the same time are very rare to find, very far and few between. But as Fraggle said, one should look at the code being applied to one's system. Like if you receive a package update, and so you have to check the code before you apply the said update. But we all know that 99% of the people are not gonna bother. 99% of the people are just gonna see the update and just hit update. In that case, I would recommend people secure themselves by creating a script that creates a backup in case you're not using PTRFS and snapshots and these kind of things like me. You just create a manual snapshot before the update, so in case something goes wrong, you can roll back. But other than that, everything that was said is true, 100%.
Des, go ahead.
I do have my own custom update server, which I created. Right now, it's basically a bunch of bash scripts and things like that in order to make it work. But yeah, it's pretty much custom protocols made out of that.
Drew?
I kind of wanted to slide off of the update system thing just for a few minutes now. I'd be curious. This is not a Linux specific topic, but we know how passwords can be can be something that is a real problem for some people. Maintaining your password in a database or what have you. And pass keys now. And I would be curious to know what people are using either for software or for how they are securing websites and so on. Personally, I have two things. One for work. I use KeePass XC for work and store the database on a Google on a Google Drive. Not my not my decision, just letting you know ahead of time. And the other thing is, like Matt, I've been using Proton Mail, and with that is Proton Pass. So I stopped using Bitwarden and have been using Proton Pass exclusively for, I don't know, a few months now. I really like it. It's one thing that I was not prepared for, and I've been paying for the Bitwarden um, uh, $10 a year deal for a while, but I've really thought that since I'm already paying for Proton, the Proton Pass is really stinking good if you are, if you're in that market.
Steve?
Oh yeah, I raised my hand. I forgot about that. Yeah, I use Bitwarden, Vault Warden to be exact, on which is hosted on my home lab Raspberry Pi for now. It's going to be migrated to the mini PC soon. But I also keep a hard copy. I have a notebook that has the important passwords. Not all of them. The rest are on Vault Warden, but the important ones, like my credit card information and stuff, they're on hard code. Those credit card information I don't even put on Bitwarden. Even though it's more it's more convenient to have them in via autofill, easy access. I don't like that. I don't like the idea of having my banking information on any software. So I keep a hard copy, and the other hard copy are actually my debit cards. So, but yeah, I mostly use Bitwarden, which is locally hosted, not hosted online anywhere, not even on my VPS. So I moved away from my VPS. I just keep them on my Raspberry Pi. So. And I secure my all websites. There's a tool. I forgot the name of it. I'm not on my computer right now. I'm laying in bed. I was watching Supernatural, but there's a tool that allows you to password protect all your bookmarks in Vivaldi. So there's that.
Drew, let me ask you a question. On days like today where Proton Mail is having problems, have you had any situations where Proton Pass has had the same problems, or is there like an offline mechanism for, like, if you lose the internet, do you still have access to your passwords?
I'm going to say yes, I do have. I think it's on. I'm just looking at it just a second, Matt. So, and because this is the first time I've ever had a connectivity issue for my Proton Mail, so it looks like it is there. But let me log in. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Because like Steve, I self-host Vault Warden, and then I back up with the traditional Bitwarden account, so I have it in both places. I really wish that Bitwarden would allow you to mirror those. That'd be really, really cool if there was like an option in Bitwarden to mirror between self-hosted and their hosted versions. That way, if your self-hosted version goes away, they would, your Bitwarden would be up to date. That'd be cool. You have to do it manually, which really sucks.
I requested that feature,
Did-
but so small. On the source code. So I went to issues and I requested that feature, but so far nothing.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of issues there that relating to that, but I think their issue there is that they don't control Vault Warden. That's someone else. It's not their project. So
Proton Pass is working without benefit of the mail,
Okay.
so it's independent.
Good. I have Proton Pass enabled now or whatever. I've decided I was just going to use it as a backup, another backup just in case. So I have that enabled, but I haven't been using it. Although they put in, what's that, the email alias thing that you were talking about, simple login or whatever, that's integrated into it. That's really cool.
It definitely is. It's integrated, and it works even better than doing it the way that you've probably been doing it with Simple Pass. You just go and you just say create alias from your because I use the plugin, the Proton Pass plugin in Firefox, and then as soon as I get to something that I want to use an alias for, it automatically fills it on, and it works so well.
Yeah, it's been tempting me. The problem is I really, really like self-hosting mine. Like I want to have all the control over it, so I've been dragging my feet. I probably will end up there eventually, but as of right now, I haven't made the thing. But just kind of like an overall like password related tip for everybody else out there: just use a password manager. It doesn't matter which password manager you use. If you want to use LastPass, one password, KeePass XE. There's 12 dozen thousand of these things. Just use one. Generate all of your passwords so that they're all individual and not the same. Like,
does anyone use YubiKey? I'm sorry to jump in there, but
So-
like a YubiKey type thing where you're tying it to a device. I'm just curious.
I don't, but I've always wanted to. Anybody else use one?
Crickets.
Yeah, apparently no. Part of the reason why I don't is just because I don't know. I've read so many times where like you need to, if you don't have it with you, like you're on your laptop, but you left your key at home, you're just kind of screwed. I don't know if there's ways around that or not. So you gotta remember, reading random stories on the internet, you can't really tell what's true. So when it comes to like firewalls and stuff, does everyone just use UFW, or are you using what's built in with your distribution? Like for me, I don't have UFW installed. I have whatever OpenSUSE uses, which I'm assuming is probably UFW in the background, but it's just integrated through YAST. Steve?
I use whatever ships with KDE Plasma, and for GNOME, GUFW. So yeah, just whatever shipped with the desktop environment. I don't bother looking, because why would they include their own version if it's insecure? So that's how I think.
Yeah. Well, and it probably is easier to manage if it's already built into the UI and stuff, right? So, which is kind of the same reason why I just used what's built in with OpenSUSE. The problem with OpenSUSE is they do the way they manage zones in YAST is not fantastic, mainly because it's just YAST is super confusing, um, and just the general UI sense of stuff. So I'll always have some issues there, and they always consider like I was doing some home lab stuff and I needed to share an NFS share, and in order to get NFS to work, you'd think that you would enable NFS through your home zone, but that didn't work. So I had to enable it through it was either the external zone or the internal zone, one of the other zones. And in order to get that to work, and it just felt weird because you'd think like, yeah, your home zone is one same network. So maybe I'm just misunderstanding it. Steve, go ahead.
I don't know if Tailscale counts, so I use Tailscale as well.
I haven't looked into Tailscale as much as I probably should. Fraggle.
I kind of missed a lot of the password type conversation. I got a phone call that I had to take, but I use for password management and stuff like that. I use it's actually just called Pass. It's the Linux or Unix password manager. It's all locally stored. I have it backed up to my own hosted Git repo. Private repo, right? Fully encrypted. I can generate whatever passwords I want. I can change them as often as I want. Copy them to clipboard. I can have it burn off the clipboard or get removed from the clipboard within like 10 seconds. So I have 10 seconds to copy paste it. Yeah, it's super easy. I mean, I've transferred that from across 3 systems, from like upgrading hardware to reinstalls to everything like that. And it's seamless. It works great. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Cool. Patrick.
Hello. Yes, I'm actually only 6 months into my Linux journey. I've done a little bit of distro hopping. I'm currently on Arch, and as far as the password goes, I'm actually using NordPass for my passwords. Updates, if I looked at code, I would be like, what is this? So I simply run Pacman SYU and just let it go about once a week or so.
Yeah.
But
do you install stuff from the AUR ever?
every once in a while, yes. Some packages just aren't on the main repository.
The reason why I ask is because we can kind of transition into installing software and stuff. The thing is, like, on OpenSUSE, we can use the Open Build service, and there's just a lot of stuff on there. If you're on Debian or whatever, or Ubuntu, you can go find random PPAs. On Arch, you have the AUR. On Fedora, you have Copper and stuff, and there's just so much stuff there that just comes from random people. So I wonder what everybody's situation is when it comes to installing programs and apps and stuff from third parties, where you kind of just can't quite be sure of the quality and stuff. Steve, go ahead.
Wow, I got a lot to say this time around. But when it comes to the AUR, yes, I install a lot of packages from the AUR through Chaotic AUR because I don't want to bother building. But when it comes to my software, it's 99% Flatpaks, not 1% packages, which are the ones that come with the desktop environment I'm using. But speaking of the AUR, they recently announced. I don't know if you saw that they're no longer going to host ARM anything. They're no longer going to host anything that's not x86-64. So any custom package that's ARM based or anything other than x86-64, they're going to get rid of. They're going to start pruning the AUR from these packages. So you gotta, if you want to keep those packages, but better keep the PKG builds around because they're soon gonna disappear. Other than that, you got to be careful with the AUR, as we always say. Read the PKG build. If you want to install AUR packages, I highly recommend using it the right way by not using Paru or Yay, but by git cloning the package repo and then running make PKG inside that repo. Or otherwise use something like PackSeek. PackSeek forces you to read the PKG build before installing. Whenever you select the package, it's a two-pane terminal. On the left you got the package, on the right you got the package build. So read the package build, and that's how you can keep yourself secure. Don't install anything that you have where you have that causes you to doubt yourself. Read the code. You don't know how to read the code, ask someone who knows to read the code and make sure that there's no malicious software. Like Matt, you recently mentioned that you went back to Deezer. You know that the Deezer on Linux you're using is a Windows executable running through Wine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's that. Be careful. Matt, I don't need to tell you to be careful. You're you know sufficiently enough to understand these things, but for new users, read the PKG build or ask someone to read it, because more than once the AUR had not malicious software, but software that was compatible with one type of computer broke others. So be careful.
Yeah. Fraggle?
I think Des had his hand up before me.
Okay. You were at the top, so that's why I said you. Des, go ahead.
I would actually argue that installing software as far as preventing malware is slightly less secure than on Windows, for the reason that I think right now, while we can get ahead, we should have some virus scanners and things like that, but we don't on Linux. And I know we don't have much malware, which is good, but I argue that we should be getting ahead and planning for the future when we might have bunches more of malware.
Yeah. Fraggle?
I guess to continue on with the conversation and stuff like that, and kind of to add what Des was saying, there are antivirus programs available for Linux. ClamAV has been around for a long time, still maintained as far as I know. And then there's like things like Rootkit Hunter and stuff like that. So there are ways to assess your system. There are scripts and stuff like that that you can get and find that will do a full vulnerability scan or assessment of your Linux system as well, and give you a full readout of potential vulnerabilities and where to look or how to get the information to patch or remedy those vulnerabilities as well. Lots of resources out there for those things. Just not a lot of people talk about it because it's Linux. There's no viruses for Linux, right? Quote unquote. But also with installing things or like using things like Tor and even containers like Docker and stuff like that. Sometimes those can perpetrate this false sense of security as well. Even Docker, there's like Docker escape methods and stuff like that, where you can access a Docker container that's hosted on a system. You can escape from that Docker and get to the root of the host system of that container. I mean, is it sophisticated? Does it take work and time and everything like that? Yes. If the target's worth it, you're going to put in the time to do that. If it's just your average, a home user or anything like that, that's kind of self-hosting or whatever, they're probably less likely to be a target unless they say or do something that would cause them to become a target in some ways. You know what I mean? And there are a lot of people out there, like I used to be, that will just target random people that said or did something that they did not enjoy very much. But I've grown up since then. It's not something that I do anymore. But yeah, there are ways to break securities no matter what. And there are ways to create a false sense of security by not understanding the tools or the features that you're using to secure yourself.
Right. I think there's an argument to be had that you can do too much in terms of security. That is it. It's not that you are maybe you understand everything, but you overdo it, and there's too much stuff that's overlapping, and you rely on things that are there, and you think that they're doing stuff for you when they're not really doing what they think that you're doing or they're doing, and it can lead to, like I can say, a false sense of security, and also it can lead to you can also become too paranoid to the point where you have so much stuff going on, your system becomes so complex in terms of security measures that it just kind of collapses in on itself, and things just start to break left, right, and center. And then you're just as insecure as, if you were using nothing. So I think for me personally, very basic security measures, making sure your passwords change, making sure everything's updated, making sure you have your P's and Q's in a row in terms of the firewall and stuff like that. Just making sure that the basics are covered is enough, and then just being smart about what you click on in your email. Just don't click on links. RBM, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to start with in terms of security and things like the need for a firewall on your system, or there was one more thing that was on the tip of my tongue. But if the main thing to note is whether you have any like data worth breaching and where that data is. If you don't really need to worry so much about getting a virus if you use some basic like internet filtering, just your own, whatever kind of filtering you need to do. Some use ad blockers and strongly rely on that. It's about all that you need as far as I'm concerned. And just some willpower not to click on the flashiest links all the time. And generally, you're going to be well protected, even if you are not running Linux. You can do that just fine on Windows. It does require you to kind of take control of your experience, but that's all that it really requires. You don't really need these extra protections as much. Unfortunately, if you expose data in some way and you have an attack surface, Fraggle was right. A motivated actor will find it and exploit it. But the way that you expose that attack surface almost all the time for a regular user, even on like office networks at work, is really just by browsing the internet unsafely. Not that you're not typically doing something like exposing your data publicly on a self-hosted instance as much. Like that's, and the best case scenario, it should be that it's probably just behind a VPN. You know, everybody was mentioning tail scale and stuff. There are exceptions to every rule, but just good internet hygiene will protect you from so much, no matter what platform you're running.
Yeah, makes sense. Patrick, go ahead.
So to expound on RBM's last thing about ad blockers, according to Brave, Jitsi has nothing going. No trackers, no ads, no nothing.
Hallo, mein kleiner Scheißer.
I just thought I'd let you know
Ja,
that.
ich wollte sagen, ich hol dich ab
That's it.
im Auto.
Answer, yeah, there you go. Answer your phone while being unmuted. Fraggle, go ahead. Don't forget to mute yourself.
Oh, the phone call thing kind of threw me off for a second.
Yeah.
Let me recollect my thoughts here. Yeah, what RBM was saying about the attack surface and stuff like that. Like, I know it's not so much your average home user or anything like that, but realistically, like if you have a Wi-Fi or like an IP addressable type printer at home, like configure that too, because leaving it as default, there's potential that it is exposed to the internet directly, and people can stumble across those things. Like in my spare time, just for fun, like across the country in British Columbia, I found a printer. It was a Lexmark that was default configured. I could use it as a pivot to get internal to the network, and it was from a pharmacy. So, I mean, that's hospital networks and everything. Like, it's an exposure that's unnecessary. So, good advice is just don't leave things default. If it's going to be touching the internet, don't leave it default, because that's how you get got.
RBM?
Absolutely. Do not leave things in the default state. The default state is meant to be convenient for you to reach the device and then immediately change everything. That's exactly the reason why when you first log in to a new Linux install, the very first thing, if they don't ask you what your passwords are during the installation process, then they do immediately upon first login. For the same reason, you are expected to change your defaults, and they present them to you and expect you to look at this thing in the face and do something about it. If you're not taking care of that, then you're definitely going to expose more issues for yourself. But additionally, a lot of those things like printers that might be online and accessible that way, a lot of them are also accessible over the internet remotely if you have UPnP enabled on your network. So that is definitely, like, before you even get to spaces like firewalling and things like that, make sure that the UPnP is not enabled on your network, because that will expose random things to the internet upon plugging them in and turning them on, and you won't ever know about it without inspecting your network.
So let me ask you guys a question, just more of a nerdy question. How often do you regenerate your SSH keys? Because I have a horrible habit of using the same SSH key forever. And I don't know if I feel good about that. Steve, go ahead.
I usually regenerate my SSH keys every 48 hours. Just because since I maintain a distro now, I have a ton of them. My servers have been hacked and multiple times in the past. So I'm like, yeah, and especially the SSH keys regarding my VPS, my home lab VPS. I reset those every 48 hours. It's necessary because those are a attack vector that we don't need right now. So yeah, every 48 hours.
RBM, go ahead.
So I don't necessarily regenerate my keys that often, but I do use a new key for every host all the time. Like I never reuse my key from this PC to connect to a different system. Every new system that I connect to gets a new key. I have a folder full of like dozens of keys for every system that I go to. So I don't regenerate them often, but they're all extremely unique. So if any one of them was to be broken, you would not have access to anything else yet. You would just see one system that you were able to get into. And then, of course, that system is already minimized to run as little as possible and reduce its attack surface, even if you are in it. But I don't actually regenerate new keys other than that. When I change my system around, if I have to reinstall or something, sometimes I'll go through the process of backing up my keys. And then after a full system wipe and reset my file system, I'll go back and make new keys. But as the number of keys has grown, the amount of effort that I've put in to regenerate new ones every time has decreased.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the things I need to do better, because I use the same key everywhere. Mainly because I'm a SSH noob a lot of times, or recently, I suppose. And I was just so happy to get it to work at all, that I didn't want to change anything. But I do believe, because like I use two different ones, one for my home lab, one for everything else. So, but I need to do better. So, one area of that I also have been worried about since I got into the whole home lab stuff is that in order to expose certain things to the internet, you have to deal with the whole port forwarding stuff. Um, for those of you who use like Tailscale, do you think that's a better option than exposing to like Nginx or something like that? I don't know if anybody else has that situation. RBM?
It's the there are some services that you explicitly want to expose to the web directly. I wouldn't recommend exposing your self-hosted services to the web, but many people, like you, run a blog. Do you self-host your blog? No, you're on WordPress, aren't you?
Yeah, I have that on a VPS.
Right. That's still sort of self-hosted then.
Yes, it's self-hosted somewhere else, but yes.
Yeah, so like that needs to be exposed all the way to the internet, not just behind a VPN. You could put it behind a VPN, but then nobody else would be able to see your blog unless they were also on your VPN. So there are some things that just need to go that way, but it's really easy to get overzealous and just start putting all your services behind a reverse proxy so that they're easy to access. All of your dashboards and stuff should definitely just be behind a WireGuard connection. It's really not that difficult to have something set up and going. A lot of routers actually are starting to support it as well. So you can set up WireGuard clients on all of your devices and connect to your home network just with like a couple of clicks on your router coming up not too far in the distant future.
Yeah. See, so I don't. So things like Portainer and obviously Nginx and anything that controls anything that stays behind the firewall. But I have some things exposed. So things like circs, I have that exposed so that I can search anywhere and use my own thing. I have like Nextcloud and like fresh RSS and stuff. That I have that stuff so that if I'm out and about, I can get to it very easily. And I use when I learned how to do it, I learned Nginx first, so that's the reason. That's the way I did it. But I'm not sure if that's the best way. It's one of those things that you kind of worry about. But I also have that whole the reason. So I use Proxmox, and I have the entire VM where all the Dockers and stuff are contained on a VLAN with its own rules and stuff. So it should be okay. But I'm still always very worried about that. Steve?
Yeah. When it comes to Nginx, I dropped it completely. I now use Cloudflare. Cloudflare has a GUI container if you want to configure it that way, but you don't need to. But I switched to it because I'm like, they know security. This is their bread and butter. So I don't trust myself as much as I trust them. They've been doing it for so long, so I switched to it completely, and it's super easy. You just install. They give you the commands to enable the service, and once you done that, you go to the zero trust zone on your Cloudflare account, and you set up you expose your stuff using that. So far, I haven't had any troubles, and the best part is when you have what's it called? Tower thing to update all your Docker containers.
Watchtower?
Watchtower. It updates all your Docker containers, and you set it and forget it. And it doesn't work for everything, of course. There are some Docker containers that refuse to update for some reason. For example, Portainer. Because there's Portainer 23 in some places, but 23 is not the latest version. 21 is. 23 is a custom. It's upcoming, but some people use that version to create their own containers, versions of Portainer. So you go to install Portainer. Some of them have Portainer 23, which is not released yet in their Docker Compose for whatever reason. But that, for example, never updates via Watchtower for me, at least. So I don't get it. I have to manually update it every time. And another thing that doesn't update using Watchtower is Image, because I'm using a custom version of Image. I had to do it via the long way around. So Watchtower doesn't detect it. I have to update it manually every time. But other than that, I switched to Cloudflare. Cloudflare is easy to set up and just works.
So let me ask. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about browsers just a little bit more. Anybody that's on here use one of those hardened browsers, things like LibreWolf or WaterFox or whatever it's called, or something similar like that, Tor maybe. Anybody else use one of those as your like default browser, or you just have it on hand or whatever? RBM?
I test drove for a few weeks with like a Frankenstein of the the user.js files and stuff for setting all those hardened config values. I customized them from like Arkenfox and a couple of other like hardening projects that all pretty much do the same thing, and was trying to look for a way to make like just the right amount of like convenience still work while being more anonymized and more hardened. But it was there were a lot of things that just I couldn't find a workaround for, and like it will frequently break things that are also supposed to already be secure, like two-factor auth situations and single sign-on stuff, like single identity things. Those would frequently break, and it was very much a headache to deal with, especially when I needed to get into like my GitHub or something.
Yeah, so I've tried it too, but my default status is lazy. And never been really capable of changing that default status. Very much an inertia momentum kind of guy. So when I use a browser, a lot of stuff I will sign out of if I'm leaving it behind, the important stuff. But there's some things that I just don't care about that I want to stay logged in. Mastodon, for example. Like like if somebody hijacked that or whatever, but it has two-factor authentication, so it's as locked down as it needs to be. But I don't want to have to log into it every single time. Like that would bug me. And one of the things about all those hardened browsers is they all have it set up so that when you leave the browser, when it's closed, it deletes everything, like all the history, the cookies, and everything, which is proper practice and stuff. And I understand that, but there's just certain situations where I just want to stay logged in, or I want the website to remember what I'm doing or whatever between browser launches. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that those more hardened browsers aren't for lazy people like me. So also, Vivaldi's just astonishingly too good to leave behind. But I've been considering having like a secondary browser, like Mulvad browser or something, or something like that. 'Cause that's based on Tor, so you kind of get the Tor stuff. And I use Mulvad for my VPN, so I can have that on hand for when I need to do like the ultra secure stuff. So maybe a two browser situation for me would be the best. I can be lazy in Vivaldi and use Mulvad or whatever to be more secure about it. So just on that note, VPNs, yay or nay? Do you guys use use a VPN? Which one do you use? Which one do you recommend? How do you use it? Do you have it on all the time, or do you just use it when you're going to go torrent something off the good places or whatever? RBM, go ahead.
I liked Mulvad a lot for VPNs, but I also don't like paying for VPNs with crypto or anything with crypto. So that was a weird experience to have to deal with. But I have switched over to Proton because we picked up a paid like family share plan thing, and it comes with a whole bunch of VPN connections and stuff. So I put some of my services behind it, so they're running behind the Proton VPN all the time, incoming and outgoing, or incoming and outgoing connections, and I turn it on and like test things by connecting to different regions. Like my game streaming and stuff, I check over the internet to see if like how the latency feels and stuff by connecting to like Canada and back, just to see about things like that. But as far as security goes, I don't know. I don't really need to be secure from anything by using a VPN, so I don't really use it for that purpose, I guess.
Drew?
I am using Proton VPN as well, but I have used others in the past. And the only reason why I'm using Proton, I guess, is I think it's really simple to use, at least for me at this point, just to have everything with one company. The others that I've used are Bravado VPN rather. And that was kind of freebie. I was subscribing to Easy News, and it came with. But back in the day, I used Windscribe. It's just something that I was using when I was a Windows user many years ago. And I guess I bought like a lifetime subscription to it. And all of a sudden I'm like, I wonder if that's still active. And so I put it in my Firefox browser just to see if I could just turn it on. And I was able to log in and use WinScribe and apparently I have a lifetime subscription to that. So there you go.
Awesome. Fraggle, go ahead.
I use OpenVPN. I don't use it too often or anything like that, but I use OpenVPN, and I have like years worth of a highly curated list of servers that probably aren't publicly visible or accessible. Yeah, it's been years of practice and curating my VPN servers that I'm okay with using, because I think I have like internet trust issues, but yeah. That, or like if I'm doing something where I just want to dispose of the session or anything like that, as odd as it sounds, I use LuaKit, which, if I remember right, uses the WebKit GTK as the backend, and I just send it through Tor. Like I Torify it from the browser. I launch it from the browser. It's in a temporary session. As soon as that session's over, everything's gone. But again, I probably just overcomplicate it, and I'm a bit overzealous when I'm doing those things. But when I use that, I don't need those things coming back to me. So, yeah.
GNU to Linux, go ahead. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I'm muted now. You hear me, right?
You can hear you, but you're very broken up.
Oh, how about now?
It sounds like you're in a really bad Verizon commercial, and we can't you now. So you're having some internet problems or something.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We heard about 3 out of 4 words. It really does not like the word you.
Come back to me.
Okay. Sorry. So right now I use Mulvad as my VPN, just mostly because it's really easy to set up with WireGuard, and you can just pop that into a terminal. And you can, the biggest problem I've always had with VPNs is that their apps usually aren't available for every distro that you use. So if you want to use Mulvad, you can use it really well on like Ubuntu or Debian. It works really, really well. They got their app, and they got a CLI, and they got a GUI, no matter how you want to use it. But if you're on OpenSUSE, actually getting that to work is damn near impossible. But because they have a WireGuard solution, you can just connect via WireGuard with a comp file, and it works really well. So I just have a couple of aliases to let me go up and down when I want to use it. But I was wondering, does anybody actually use, are there any merits to using it like full time, like just having it always on? I mean, because I've heard some people say that, yeah, this, obscuring my IP address or whatever is great. It just works really well. And then other people are like, it doesn't really do all that much for you, So I was wondering what you guys think of that. RBM, go ahead.
I don't know that I get any value out of it, more just frustration from strange connection issues or latency that it introduces. But I do just leave it running always on for my phone. So it's fine. It's always fine. But it is like it can definitely introduce a bunch of latency and stuff. And sometimes you also run into like websites that just block whole ASNs based on other kind of activity, and you'll have to go and reconnect to like an entirely different region just to like log in one day, it can be more frustrating than anything. And I'm, again, not sure what it's actually supposed to be protecting me from, at least in terms of what I use the internet on my phone to do. So I don't know what value there is in it, at least in that case. But if you are always doing something that you want to keep private, then it certainly is going to help with that, as long as you make sure that you have your kill switch also enabled.
Gnome, go ahead.
I got a question and a personal gripe on the topic of VPN. For my personal VPN, I run WireGuard. When I'm trying to watch YouTube videos, for some reason, it does not store any history. I can watch videos all day inside the tunnel, and there's no YouTube history. As soon as I leave the tunnel, it starts tracking my history again. Does anyone else have that issue, or is it just me problem?
I thought you were going to answer your own question. I don't use that WireGuard for that feature, so I don't know for me personally. Anybody else have an answer to that question? No. I think that when it comes to the whole VPN thing, it has the problem of being one of those feature or those services or whatever that have actual benefits in some situations, but because of the YouTuber ecosphere where everyone and their brother got a YouTuber or a sponsorship from random VPN, like private internet access for a while was like you could not watch a YouTube video without seeing private internet access being advertised. And all of a sudden, oh, you want to be secure? Get a VPN. You're secure. You're done. Job done. Right. And I think that really misled a lot of people as to what a VPN is actually good for. It's gotten better now that, it's not as pervasive as it was, and people are more honest about like, oh, this is really good if you're on like Starbucks Wi-Fi, then use this, and that's when it's really good. So it's gotten a little bit better, but because of that period of time where people didn't really know what a VPN was, and every YouTuber had the ad, and they're like, oh, you want to be secure, use this thing, so it's really muddied, I think, in terms of what a VPN's actually for. And it led to people thinking that it did more than it actually did. So when it comes to, okay, so let's go around here just generally. The last thing, and we can, if we branch off from it, it's fine. Matt went completely brain fart there again. Good Lord, I got some major memory problems.
Seems to be the theme today.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it's because it's the first lug of the year. I had to. I should have Genie open just take notes or something. Then I can actually remember what was going on. So when it comes to security, do you guys have anything? Oh, there was. Are there any security practices that you don't currently do that you would like to do, but haven't been able to, or just haven't gotten around to yet? So anybody have an answer to that question? Gnome, go ahead.
I'd like to run a SIEM, SIEM, like Splunk, on my home lab, just to grab logs from every machine, just to see what's going on. But I haven't set up that yet, but that's a lot of work, and I'm not even sure if I could set up on that many machines, like what a personal license is. There's cost, there's a lot of hurdles. But I would like to set up a Splunk instance at home.
Okay. I have, by the way, no clue what that is. RBM, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm also looking at setting up systems like that, like another one, like I don't even know how to say it, Waza or something, WAZUH. It's a very strange name, but I also want to set up like commit signing and GPG or PGP or something for email signature to encrypt my communications and to make sure that the commits to my repositories are assigned.
We could do the whole thing on PGP keys and stuff like that and emails, and it would just be a thing. Steve, go ahead.
Do you hear me? Because I'm using headphones now.
Yep.
Well, I would love to be able to have a way to protect other stuff that I put online, a more secure way to protect anything that I put online, is because, like, for example, I have a few private documents stored locally on a password protected password protected directory, but I want to be able to do the same online, just putting a plain password or password prompt. Like currently I have some documents on my private hosting in a HT access protected folder, but that doesn't protect them enough against people who know what they're doing. So those are, I wish I knew more about security and online security to be able to apply them. That's the main thing for me, because I have a lot of private documents. Like I have images of my passport and stuff related to my bank. I want to be able to protect them in a way that gives me peace of mind. Nothing gives me peace of mind except locally, but I want to be able to put them online, because I know locally hard drives can die at any moment. So online would be better, but there's no rock solid way to protect these kind of things, at least not that I know of.
D-dubs?
I was actually going to, for GNOME, there's another solution too, if you don't want to use Splunk, is Log Navigator, LNAV. It allows you to do a lot of analysis on systemd logs. But you could also, a cheap man solution is using system log and then actually have them all point to the system log daemon server, and all your logs will be collated in that one system, and then you can use Log Navigator, because Log Navigator lets you use the various systemd markers and tags, so you can really just go through systemd logs a lot quicker and easier. Nice little tidbit for you.
Okay, GNU to Linux, go ahead.
All right, I rebooted, and I think one of the perils of keeping Firefox open with 75 tabs at every moment is that after a few days, you run out of memory and things start acting.
We can hear you fine now.
Yeah, and I could see the videos on the screen. That's what it was. I was like out memory even with 24 gigs of RAM. Anyway, to answer the current question, I do not use a password manager yet, but I probably should start. But it seems very daunting to start going through all my websites and accounts and, putting them into whichever password manager I decide to use. It seems like a big hassle to get started, so that's why I keep putting it off.
When I decided to use one, and now this was years and years ago, it's literally just use the internet as you normally do, and as you go to a service and to use it, change the password, and so you don't have to go and set aside a day to do all of it. Just you go use YouTube, change your password, and then that one's done. And then just as you go through and use the internet, you'll slowly build up your database of passwords and stuff. It also will help you kind of realize what services you never visit, and maybe you can just kind of keep a list of those. If you don't have a password stored in the password manager and you've never visited it during your time of setting that stuff up, you can just close that account, and you don't. That kind of leads me to just an offshoot thing that I just thought of. If you have an account somewhere and you don't use it, delete that damn thing. It will help you a lot. Fraggle, go ahead. Drew, then go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Okay.
I apologize. I put my hand down and then I forget to click the other button on mute. So not really. I think I'm a bit overzealous myself when it comes to this stuff. Especially like I constantly have a live feed of my network activity. And as far as like anybody that's looking to potentially utilize like Splunk or anything like that, if you want something that's a viable alternative but takes a while to get configured, set up, and actively analyzing and notifying of potential like bad connections, or somebody trying to access your network that shouldn't be, Zeek is a great tool. Zeek. As far as I remember, it's all configured with like the frameworks and everything like that. It's all done using Lua. Or I mean, you can use JavaScript, as far as I know, too, if you want to do like a web portal for it and stuff like that. But Zeek is just this incredible network analysis tool. It's it's well worth looking into if you want to be on top of that stuff. So yeah.
Drew, go ahead.
This might kill me, but I'm trying to figure out ways to share my password manager rather with my wife, which genuinely hate doing. But what if I die? You know what I'm saying? So what if someone needs to like be able to get into bank stuff and stuff like that? So I have been slowly but surely been just like allowing her, since we were both on this kind of like Proton family plan, allowing her, you can share your certain parts of your vault, your password vault, with someone else. And that seems to be a good solution, yet a solution that she will never take advantage of. So it's there. I don't know if anybody else is trying to share passwords. I know it's probably not the best thing. I mean, she does have like the master password to get into that like database, but it's a lot simpler just to be able to share passwords securely. There you go.
Yeah. The whole what happens when you die thing is gonna haunt a lot of people. As the digital generation starts, getting older, yeah, it's gonna be a big deal. Gnome, go ahead.
Well, I had my hand up before you said she knew the master password. I was going to recommend an alternative. Just use your password manager on your phone and add her fingerprint as an allowed fingerprint to unlock, and then bam, your password manager is also unlocked. But if she knows the master password, I guess that's a moot point. Disregard.
RBM, go ahead.
I do know that Bitwarden and I think other providers have this feature as well, but I do know that Bitwarden does have an option for you to set up where you can securely share passwords through the Bitwarden client to one another, and also you can set somebody to like have like an access key to like upon your death or something. I need to reread the whole feature because I haven't looked at it in like 3 years. But yeah, there is a way in there for you to share your passwords through the client, and for you to like determine how your password manager can be accessed in the event of your death or some other inconvenient reason.
Someone came up with a service, and I don't even know if it's still around. This is years ago. I'm pretty sure they called it "Are You Dead Yet?" And they sent you an email every morning, and you had to respond to it. Otherwise, they did something. I don't think that it was anything like, oh, give everybody your password or something. But they like sent an email like, oh, this person died or something. So obviously, many things wrong with that way of approaching things, but it feels like a service or something going on. We would kind of like trigger. You could set up something like that if you needed to, but there's so many things that could go wrong. Like you just get around to press the button, and then all of a sudden everyone thinks you're dead. That could be a problem. Steve, go ahead.
I already preempted all that. I gave my youngest brother access to everything I got. So I told him, in case something happens to me, because wars. So in case something happens to me, you got access to everything I got. So yeah, and he set me up as his fallback. So yeah, we just sat in a room. We gave each other access to everything we got, except banking stuff, because my brother knows me very well. If I have access to his banking stuff, I stop buying shit. So because I know he's got more money than anyone in the rest of the family. So so he doesn't trust me with that, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, I don't know that I trust anyone in my family for any reason to have any of my passwords, to be honest with you. So I'm not sharing anything with anybody. So, one of the things, so for me personally, the thing that I would want to do, if one of the things that I want to get better at that I don't, and this is more general, I suppose, I just want to know more, because there's just so many things, like things that have been mentioned here today that I have no clue what they are, and I'd like to know. I'd also like to know where because like I have general ideas of where my weaknesses are, but right now I don't know for sure. And even if I did know where the weaknesses were, I don't know that I would know how to fix them. And I think that that's when it comes to security, probably the biggest thing is when you're a complete and utter noob, but you're getting into more complex stuff. So the more complex your system is, like you add a home lab, you add a switch, or you add Wi-Fi, or mesh network, or whatever you're doing. The more complex your setup is, the more attack surface you have, the more places you have that could go wrong. And getting into that stuff is really easy. Like you can set up home lab, you can set up Docker, you can set up Proton, you can set up Proxmox, all this stuff very, very easily to do. But network stuff is really hard, and because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know where to look for the stuff that you don't know or what you should know. And that's where the situation I'm in is I don't know what I should know, and I don't know how to figure that out without going and taking a college course or an online YouTube academy on networking and firewalls and all that stuff. I have a general knowledge. I said this in a video once. I know just enough to be dangerous to myself and others, and I'm not sure how to fix that problem. And I think that that's probably the situation that a lot of people are in, is that they know just enough to be worried about everything constantly and paranoid beyond all belief, but no real means to fix that solution, simply because a lot of the security stuff is super complicated, and also some of the security stuff isn't actually about security at all, but is marketing, fooey, and you don't know which is which, because everyone's wanting a dollar or two, and so they say, oh, this is the security thing, you can use this thing and you're secure, and it's just, how do you know what's what, how do you know how to fix things, and the answer is that is just constantly have to think about it and learn as you go, and just hope for the best, that you don't become a target of some random YouTube sucker because you were stupid enough to create a YouTube channel and then have 60,000 subscribers. It's one of those things that I really that I worry about. Also, I mean, there are some things that like I don't have copies of my banking stuff on a digital thing at all, like or my driver's license or passport. None of that stuff is digitized at all. I do have a bank account. I do have all that stuff, but it's all as separated as I possibly can make it. And I just hope that is enough. So I think that's where I am at right now, is that I just have hope and pray that I know just enough to keep myself safe. And as I learn more, hopefully I can become more secure, but it's a slow and ongoing process. So there's that. Anybody have anything else to say when it comes to Linux specifically? Are there things on Linux specifically that you do or want to do or have seen others do that you want to caution about or provide praise for, anything like that? Going once. Oh, Gnome, go ahead.
Can I jump in about the first? I wasn't here for the first topic, but
yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
For security thing, instead of giving a user blanket sudo for everything, only give them limited sudo, like the 1 or 2 commands they need. Just don't give them full sudo access, because then you keep, again, your attack surface down. And never give a user access to the less command with sudo.
Explain that last part.
With less, you can escape out to sudo because less can execute shell commands. So you use the exclamation point, which tells it to exec shell. Just do /bin bash. And if you did sudo less, it'll run bin bash as sudo. And now there's your privilege escalation. Yeah, never give sudo less.
Well, no, I'm terrified. Appropriately. Okay. Anybody else have anything specifically to say about hardening Linux or anything like that that you'd like to share before we wrap this thing up? GNU to Linux, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about the VPN thing that I didn't get a chance to get out earlier. I use Surfshark, which not only has a great deal, usually on Black Friday. It's about $50 for 2 or 3 years, as someone else mentioned in the chat. But they also have an app for Linux. You download through the command line. I think it's a PPA. It works on Linux Mint. And not only that, but if you want to use it on your cell phone, they pretty much have an app for everything. Android, even, and I get the most use out of it on Fire TV, where I watch YouTube most of the time and other things. And essentially, I'm using it a lot, either for downloading torrents or getting around geo-blocking to access content.
Yeah. I use that for a lot of that stuff too. Gnome, you have your hand raised next. Go ahead.
You talking about sharing things? I just wanted to share a resource real quick about that less exploit. It's called GTFO bins. I put it in the chat there, but it's gtfobins.github.io. It shows you all kinds of different Linux binaries and how they can privilege escalate.
So in order for any of that kind of stuff to happen, they need actual access first, though, right? So they either have to hack in or have physical access?
Not always. Sometimes, like, say, Apache web server. You can get privilege escalation through an Apache web server or Nginx, depending on the version. Yeah, there's lots of different ways.
Don't use the internet ever. Just unplug everything. It's going to be fine. Fraggle, go ahead.
I don't know that. I know you wanted things like specific to Linux. This isn't really, but
That's fine.
The only advice that I can give is don't be afraid to research. Matt, you said you just know enough to be dangerous, kind of thing. But start with basic search terms. How do I limit, or how do I prevent people from connecting to my network? How do I limit my network to 10 devices? Things like that can lead you down the road to discovery just by using, basic search terms for what you want to achieve. Start out with a general idea and then narrow down from there. It's really not as difficult as you may think to figure out IP addressing and subnet masking, things like that, as well as IP tables and restricting ports or opening them. It seems daunting because you don't have that knowledge yet, but it's really not that difficult to learn. So yeah, don't be afraid.
I'm constantly afraid. The thing I was always thinking about is that when you work in a place, like you have a IT department, and they worry about the stuff for you, right? And it works so well because yeah, you can obviously a lot of the big exploits and like ransomware stuff is usually caused by some rando who clicked on a link in an email and they try to teach you not to do that. But the people who are responsible for doing as much of the protections as possible work around the clock and do that for you, and you don't really have to think about it. When you're at home on your home network and you're doing stuff, you have to think on that stuff on your own. And I think that that's where I kind of fall down is just that there's so much there to think about and stuff. So I do need to do the more research stuff, but it does kind of also sometimes it just falls by the wayside. I revert back to my statement earlier where I say my default status is lazy. So yeah, overall I think that there are many places where I need to be better, and I think that many places a lot of people need to be better. But overall, I think that was RBM said it earlier. If you're just smart about what you do on the internet, you're going to be about 90% of the way there. Don't click on links in your email that you don't know who they're from, and even if you do know who they're from, still don't click on links in the email. It's just there's so many. Like that seems like be like the biggest thing that happens. Like that's how a lot of this stuff starts. Like with clicking stuff on the internet, in an email somewhere along the line. Like it feels like every time there's like a ransomware attack or whatever, that's how it started. So just I think my one piece of advice is just to be as smart as you can and use common sense, which is probably asking entirely too much of people on the internet. So. Yeah. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap that up for today. It's a little bit early. We're about a half an hour from our usual 2 hour mark, but we're just going to go ahead and it feels like we've reached a natural stopping point for the conversation. So, unless anybody has anything else to say. Yay, nay, no. Okay, good. We'll go ahead and stop that there. Then we'll just end a little bit early, and I can go do some actual work because I'm actually back at my job now, guys, and I hate it. I had a whole month off, and it's really hard when you take a week off to go back to work. You can take a whole month off because that's the whole company decided to do. It is astonishingly hard to go back and do the work again. Like I forgot so much stuff. Like I don't remember how to do my job anymore. It's taken me days to get back into it. So I can actually go do some of that stuff. So anyways, for those of you who watched live, thank you so very much for watching. We do appreciate it. We do 2 of these every single month. We do an early one, which was this one. It's always on the 2nd Thursday of the month. And we do a later one, which is on the 4th Thursday of the month when there's a 4th Thursday, which there usually is. And that one's at a later time at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. This one's 11:15 p.m. Or 11:15 a.m. Eastern Time is the early one. You can join the Discord, which you'll find links in various places to join to get all the information and notifications and stuff. Or you can follow me on Mastodon. I usually tweet out or toot out or whatever the fuck there, so you can follow for notifications when this is happening. We also do stream this live, so if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. Excuse me. Some people join onto the call and never participate, that's fine. Or you can watch the YouTube stream if whatever way floats your boat. Or you can join if you have a microphone of even dubious quality. You can join in and talk about the stuff. We usually about a week beforehand we'll put up a poll so we can decide what the topic is going to be, and then people vote on the poll. So and I would also ask, and we've talked about this before, don't vote in the poll if you're not going to come here and take part. So it just works better. So anyways, that's it for this one. We'll see you for the next lug in 2 weeks. So we'll see you guys then.